Welcome to the Political Insider, where we keep you updated about what is going on in South Africa and the news that you should know so that you can look very clever at parties when you trot out some of these wonderful bits of information that you get here. So, if you enjoy the Political Insider, please help us out by subscribing to the channel. That way, you will be sure to get the bright news every day, and you can then look brilliant when you speak to your friends. Let's kick off at the Madlanga Commission. The Madlanga Commission has been doing some sterling work. There's clearly a bit of a target date here. There has been some action from the presidency in referring people for further action. It's very vague, but in South Africa, we've got to grab whatever we can. But we are starting to get into the weeds now of some very, very bad people that really do deserve to pay a price for their action. And the Madlanga Commission for the last 2 days has been hearing from witness F. This is in camera. In other words, the person's not there live. You hear their voice only. This is apparently to protect them. It didn't help so much recently where witness D, I think he was, got gunned down afterwards, where it was fairly obvious who it was. And quite clearly, to anybody who would have a problem with witness F, they would know exactly who it is. In fact, it raises the question as to why this person is in camera. We recently had the situation of General Sinona, who has subsequently been referred for further action, who looks like dead man walking. This guy, Sinona, his body language, his attitude was terrible on camera. It is going to send the person straight to jail. And I think the same would happen with witness F if he was live. Just hearing him in camera is bad enough. But quite clearly, what you have is this witness F is a policeman who worked for Shadrack Sibiya, head of the Hawks in Gauteng. And he told the commission that Sibiya had instructed him, were his words, to arrest the blogger Musa Kawula. Now, Kawula is a blogger, and he had been putting out information, and it does make everybody that sort of puts stuff out a little bit concerned. However, the fact that it's coming to light means that it would be harder to do something like this now that this has come to light. So let's not worry about your favorite podcasters. We seem to be okay as long as we, don't start saying outrageous stuff. But what was Kawula's problem? What was Sibiya's problem with Kawula? Well, the problem there is that Musa Kawula had been posting accusations about Kat Matlala. In the light of what we have subsequently heard from the Madlanga Commission and the Parliamentary Ad Hoc Commission, what Kawula actually revealed was quite tame. But you've got to cast your mind back to 2024 when Kawula was making these allegations. And this was when the ANC was in full defense mode. They were trying to hide all of the wrongdoings. That was unearthed by General Mkhwanazi. It's hard to remember that a world existed where you could do whatever you liked and almost be guaranteed that the state would do nothing about it. So, Sibiya then orders an arrest of Musa Kawula for contravening Section 13 of the Cybercrime Act for so-called malicious communications. Right? You can't just go and post on a public platform something that's absolutely scurrilous and alive. I don't like you. I say some really bad things about your conduct. And if these are lies, I run the risk of falling foul of this law. Fine. But when you hear what he had to say, you would see that this wasn't overly, it was not way off the mark in any shape or form. So he was, this witness F was told by Sibiya to arrest Kawula and to forward the warrant of arrest to Kat Matlala, because Matlala owns a security company, and sometimes the security companies will act like little policemen. Now, you've got to understand how crazy this is. We get used to crazy pretty quickly in this country, but understand that Kat Matlala is one of South Africa's worst criminals. He has been in jail before. He has evaded God knows how many charges. He has run syndicates. This isn't a nice guy who is running a little bit of a business and perhaps, skimping on his taxes. No, no, no. This is a guy who was killing people. He was killing people, Babita Deokaran and all of that. He was stealing money from hospitals where the most vulnerable people go for care. This is a very dangerous and a very, very bad man. And, he has the ear and the actions of one of the most powerful policemen in the world, in the country. Definitely not in the world. But it's going to get a little bit worse than that. So he said that he must pass on the warrant of arrest to Kat Matlala because he's got a security company and they can help with the arrest. And they also said that Matlala had provisions where Musa usually goes on the weekends. In other words, he knows where the guy goes on the weekend and he can arrest him. Turns out where he goes on the weekend is for a cycle. And, Matlala's men can take him in his bicycle and go to jail. So what did Musa Kawula reveal? Well, he put a post out on X where he said the following. And please put your mind back 2 years. Okay, this is before all this information comes out. He says, Kat Matlala, or Vusi Matlala as he calls him then, owns Cat VIP Protection Services. Cool. It was being sort of fudged as to who owned this thing. Matlala was also friends of Vusi Kekeke, I should say, and he is the co-boss of the Boko Haram gang. They love to give these gangs names after other fearsome organizations. It's got to help. I wouldn't like to hear that the Boko Haram gang is after me. And he says he stands accused of defrauding Tembisa Hospital to the value of R1 million. Well, Musa, you kind of missed out a zero and you could have doubled it as well. It wasn't just R1 million. It wasn't, money seems to be about 2 billion rand. Matlala's wife has been bussed for traveling with blue lights on. That is true. His wife got blue lights thanks to Julius Mkhwanazi, and eventually somebody questioned why this woman is driving to and doing the school run with blue lights on. This is really South Africa. Gotta love it. If you're watching from overseas, on behalf of the rest of South Africa, I'm deeply embarrassed. But anyway, that's the way we roll. He also posted on X that Matlala is connected to the killing of Babita Deokaran. Now, this was before the publication of this book, before the allegations of Mkhwanazi, and before all of this comes to light. So he's posting this on X. He says on X in this post, he operated a drug business through DJ Somebody. And that's why DJ Somebody got shot and killed. And all of this happens in September in 2024. But Sibiya carries on. He even goes as far as to invite Matlala to his home for a Thanksgiving ceremony. Now just think of how disgusting this is. Just think of how disgusting this is. You are inviting a criminal. You're a senior policeman. You are inviting a criminal to your home for a Thanksgiving ceremony. The home that's been bought with ill-gotten gains. What thanks are you giving for? The thanks that Babita Deokaran wasn't armed, or the thanks that the Gauteng government won't investigate the money missing from Tembisa Hospital? What are you giving thanks for? I mean, have the good grace and the good sense to steal your money and be quiet about it. But no, Sibiya has to have a Thanksgiving ceremony. If you think that it was only Sibiya that was involved in this kind of thing, how about this? The National Organized Crime Unit head, Richard Shabiri, was also assisting Sibiya and Matlala evade any, break the law. He had sent a message to Kawula to say, Chomi, don't run the story. He's a good guy, referring to Kat Matlala. He never bothers anyone and he lives a private life. Once again, let's pause here to understand who we're talking about and who he's talking about. This is the person put in place by the Ministry of Police to investigate organized crime. He's talking about one of the biggest organized crime bosses in the country, Kat Matlala, saying, don't run the story because he's a good guy. He never bothers anyone. I think he bothered the Dear Quran family, by gunning down Babita. This is a man put in charge to investigate this very stuff. Journalists could find this out. A policeman with all of those resources couldn't know that. But anyway, more evidence in front of the commission. Sadly, these people left evidence wherever they went, and why wouldn't they? The police have been captured for years. They haven't, we know we've got people sitting in parliament, people in the parliamentary ad hoc committee that have broken the law. We understand that the level of absolute incompetence, willful incompetence by the police was so absolute that nobody needed to hide the evidence. So earlier evidence before the commission had revealed that Shabiri was engaged in constant communication and exchanges of money with Matlala. That came through witness B. The head of organized crime is taking money from organized crime. You've got a police chief who couldn't work this out. You've got a minister of police whose response is to close down the unit that's investigating it. Now, apparently, according to the president, nothing to see here. And if you saw the interview of the president's spokesman as he tries to explain why 14 people have been referred for further action and none of them are politicians, this explains why. Witness F explained that he had been placed under significant pressure to arrest Khawula during a weekend bike ride, and he received repeated calls from Shadrack Sibiya to expedite this arrest. Sibiya explained to Witness F that he was getting a lot of pressure for the arrest of Khawula from Deputy Minister Kassel Matale. Now let's remember who Kassel Matale is. Kassel Matale is the benefactor and mentor of Julius Malema. In actual fact, when Kassel Matale went to Parliament's ad hoc committee, Julius Malema was absent for that particular day, as he was absent when Shadrack Sibiya sat before Parliament. So this connection is massive. Why was Kassel Matale putting pressure on Shadrack Sibiya to do something about Musa Khawula? Not because he was lying, but because he was telling the truth. And in one of his posts, Khawula had insulted ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula. So this goes all the way to the top, but not enough for our president to do anything about it. Oddly enough, all of these people, including Matale and Mbalula, have claimed that Khawula was lying, even though, where's the lies? So, real sort of explosive stuff coming out of the commission. We continue to be impressed with Judge Mbayiseli Madlanga and his team. They seem to be great. Of course, the missing link is what happens next. The stuff has been passed over to the normal procedures, and we have to ensure that the president doesn't allow this to go at Cyril Ramaphosa pace, but to go at the pace that the South African public demands, and that some people end up in jail. It is riveting stuff, better than any soap opera on TV, and we'll keep on bringing you the news. Before we go on to our next piece, remember, big news is that next week, the president, on the 13th of February, will be doing his State of the Nation address when he opens Parliament, and we will be covering it in a breakfast on the 13th of February in Sandton with none other than Moletsi Mbeki and Mighty Jamie. And if you want to be up to date as to where the country is, what the president has to say, come and join us at the breakfast. The details are in the comment section below. Right. Let's just quickly deal with the aftermath of the announcement that John Steenhuisen has made himself unavailable for re-election to the position of leader of the DA when they go to their elective conference in April. He says that he's going to be putting his full focus in handling this exploding foot and mouth disease crisis. He says that, this is not a part-time job. And he's starting to sound a little bit like some other leaders we know, where he claims the most devastating outbreak of foot and mouth disease the country has ever seen. This was the most predictable outbreak of foot and mouth disease that the country has ever seen. This isn't like COVID, where a new disease comes along. Foot and mouth disease we've been fighting for 100 years. We've got vaccines, or we should have vaccines for this. So to say that this is some kind of outbreak as if it came out of some laboratory in Wuhan is an absolute joke. Okay? This was being flagged. In fact, this outbreak started 5-6 years ago. This didn't suddenly happen. And obviously, when you become a Minister of Agriculture, you do something about this outbreak, but clearly not. So he says the reason that he's not standing is not because of all of his political problems, but because he wants to fight foot and mouth disease. Which, of course, raises the question, why? Once again, a year is a decade in South Africa. Why, when the government of national unity was formed and the Democratic Alliance was offered ministerial positions, why did the leader of the party choose to be a minister and then a part-time leader of the party, instead of remaining leader of the party and being in parliament and letting somebody else be a minister? Pride before a fall. You've got to show how important you are. You've got to be called minister this, and you've got to go and dance in Asia with your other cabinet minister colleagues. And then you end up doing both jobs badly. Perhaps some leadership would be quite important at this stage. But the most disturbing piece of news that has emerged out of this Steenhuisen situation is that the presumptive replacement, which is Cape Town Mayor Geordin Hill-Lewis, has said that he wants to stay on as mayor while he's leader of the party. So now you're going to go from a leader who's got a job as Minister of Agriculture and then does both of them badly, to a leader who's going to stay on as mayor of the second biggest city, far away from the action. He's not going to be in parliament. He's the leader of the party, and he's going to try and lead the party and lead the city. Well, the question then rises, which one of those will be his part-time job? The mayorship or the leader of the party? Because we saw what happened after John Steenhuisen became Minister of Agriculture. The leadership of the party became his part-time job. Why can't our parties understand that to best put yourself in the best position, have your leader outside of the cabinet? Should be in parliament, but not in cabinet. If you look at what has happened in the Freedom Front Plus, since Corné Mulder became the leader of the party, which was after the election, when Peter Groenewald remained as their sole cabinet minister, but Mulder has been allowed to lead the party. And it's worked brilliantly because he can do things. He doesn't have to answer to the president. He doesn't have to answer to anybody. He is a member of parliament and he can lead his party. And the support in the party has really, really grown. So my advice to anybody from the Democratic Alliance, should they watch this, is why not have somebody else as mayor, or does the DA not have enough talent? Which is disturbing in and of itself if Geordin Hill-Lewis thinks he's the only person capable of running Cape Town. That just, that's separate discussion. Stay on as leader of the party, get into parliament, put somebody else as mayor of the city of Cape Town. That would make the most sense. But hey, I am just a lowly podcaster who's got my own views. Okay, let's end off with the talk that we know that recently US President Donald Trump extended the life of the Africa Growth and Opportunity Act, AGOA, for another year. What is AGOA? Well, for the last quarter of a century, South Africa has enjoyed tariff-free access to the massive US consumer market. And this has helped our industry. Specific sectors have really benefited. Automotive, fruit, wine, we can just sell that stuff. And it's helped our fruit and wine industry explode because we've had access to the US market. Well, the question became almost from the election of Donald Trump as to whether he'll keep us in AGOA. It's become a moot point because he slapped 30% tariffs on us. So even if we get tariff-free from AGOA, that will not help because these other tariffs are on top of it. So, we are no longer going to benefit from AGOA. And part of it is good news because it means that South Africa must start producing world-class products at world-class prices. That way you'll be able to sell them. But it just goes to show you that we must be one of the few countries in the world where our trade representatives are not out trying to do trade deals. We've just recently seen India do a massive trade deal with the European Union. We've seen Britain, the Prime Minister of Britain, go to China to do a trade deal. What happens in South Africa? Our Minister of Trade and Industry wants to start his 100 billion rand transformation slush fund. That seems to have all of his attention. And our president is applying his mind to commissions. Nobody really gives a damn about the economy. Maybe they've just been too busy organizing military maneuvers with China, Russia, and Iran. Let's, in closing, not forget that the Ministry of Trade and Industry, which is such an important ministry, was offered to the Democratic Alliance in the Government of National Unity negotiations, and they turned it down. I'm going to leave you with that. Enough said. As jy nie wil luister nie, dan moet jy voel. That's my favorite Afrikaans saying. If you don't want to listen, then you've got to feel. And in South Africa, we don't want to listen. But hey, thank you for joining us today on the Political Insider. We'll be back with more news tomorrow. Thank you.